share a terrifying childhood memory of your father holding a knife to your mother's neck. So, how did witnessing that extreme vulnerability at a young age shape your early belief that you had to be aggressive to protect yourself?
So I remember, and I think that image will be seared in my mind forever. It showed me fear men a little bit, so it took a while to overcome that fear. It showed me my mother's weakness. It showed me that my home wasn't safe. It made me realize that the world wasn't safe because if home wasn't safe, then obviously outside of the home wasn't safe. And so there was that feeling of there's nowhere safe. And so that was a very traumatizing experience to realize that there was no safe place to go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pages of Pandora, the show where we talk about stories and the authors behind them. We are all used to reading transformation stories where the author plays a victim who finally overcomes adversity. But what happens when the author looks you dead in the eye and admits, I was not the victim, I was the one who hurt people? Today we are diving into this raw, deeply uncomfortable, and incredibly powerful memoir titled The Impossible Shift From Mean Girl to Meaningful Life. Joining us is the author Jennifer Benson. Jennifer is
Hi.
a Jennifer is a New York City native, an MBA, a songwriter, a speaker, and a life coach. She has put together a book that acts less like a shield and more like a mirror, forcing both herself and the readers to confront toxic behaviors, ego, and deep seated insecurities instead of pointing fingers at everyone else. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start from the very beginning. You wear a lot of hats. You are an MBA, a corporate coach, and a songwriter. So how did your background in songwriting help you dig up the raw emotional language needed to write a memoir this vulnerable?
Uh, so, so I started songwriting back from, I guess, when I was old enough to pick up a pen. I loved music. There was something about being able to communicate my feelings in a way that could say what I was trying to say without actually saying it in front of everybody, right? And you could do that through song, and you could do it easily. So when I started writing, when I started changing and transforming my journal into the memoir, I think a part of that instinct kind of crept in because I found myself using a little bit of the melody, using a little bit of the language that I would use in my songwriting in the actual memoir itself.
Yeah, that makes total sense because music teaches you to trim away all the fluff. So when you're writing a book, you are already trained to strip away all the excuses to just get to the raw truth.
Yes, yes.
So the title of your show and book is The Impossible Shift. So why did accountability feels like an impossible hurdle at the beginning of your journey?
I think accountability is an impossible hurdle in a lot of people's journey, not just mine, because it's uncomfortable, right? It makes it's a word that says own your part of where you are in this journey right now. And it's easier to say, I am what you made me, because that requires no effort. It requires nothing from you. You know, it says everything I am, somebody else made me this way. So if I'm cursing you on the street, it's not my fault. Somebody made me that way. If I do this, it's not my fault. Somebody made me that way. But there comes a point where you have to look at your actions and say, where does that trauma end? The things that happen to me, and accountability begin. And so that's kind of where I started with this journey, and looking back and saying, at what point did that, so there's this like invisible line. So things happen to us. I mean, we all go through our own different experiences, some in varying degrees. I know my story is not the worst, and I know it's not the best, so it just sits there, right? But we all go through our things. But at what point do we say, okay, I know that happened, but how am I going to respond moving forward? What kind of action am I going to take control over my own life and make decisions for myself that is going to move me to where I want to go for my life. And that's where I came up with the idea of the impossible shift, because it's really difficult. And in some cases, some people will call it impossible because they're like, I can't change. I was made the way I am. Like, this is who I am. I am the product of all these things that happened to me from, before.
Yeah, that is a good point, because I also think that blaming others is comfortable because it protects our ego. But the second you own your part, the dynamic shift completely, and even it takes massive amount of courage to just stand in that truth.
Oh, absolutely, because it's scary. I remember when I thought about putting it out, I was like, what am I doing? Everyone is going to see that I did these things. And that is a very scary position to be in. But if I didn't do that, no one would really understand what I was trying to say. I mean, I could try to sell another self-help book, but what is that really? Like, you're just giving instructions, be good, smile a lot. But the way I wanted to do it, I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to understand what it looks like.
Yep.
And the only way to do that is to show you.
Yeah. So in chapter 2, you share a terrifying childhood memory of your father holding a knife to your mother's neck. So how did witnessing that extreme vulnerability at a young age shape your early belief that you had to be aggressive to protect yourself?
So I remember, and I think that image will be seared in my mind forever. It showed me, that it showed me to fear men a little bit. So it took a while to overcome that fear. It showed me, my mother's weakness. It showed me that my home wasn't safe. It made me realize that the world wasn't safe, because if home wasn't safe, then obviously outside of the home wasn't safe. And so there was that feeling of there's nowhere safe. And so that was a very traumatizing experience, to realize that there was no safe place to go.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because it's very heavy, and putting all these personal moments into the book is not easy. So, and even that time, I realized that why kids' brain would decide that I have to be tough so no one else ever hurt me again.
Yeah. It was definitely a difficult. It was definitely, yeah. It wasn't. Maybe it wasn't the only thing that happened, but it was the thing I decided to put in the story so that everyone could see a picture of. Yeah, I didn't want to fill the whole book with like a bunch of trauma, but yeah, I just wanted to put something in there to capture like a moment that would showcase like this is kind of what it looked like to be at my home.
So you write about a massive turning point in a city basketball court where Jimmy and his friends cornered you while your own friends just stood by and watched. So what was going through your head when you realized that the people who were supposed to have your back chose to stay silent?
I think there was a big feeling of betrayal, because I had thought that they were my friends. And so, it took a long time and a lot of reflection to realize that they were probably just as scared as I was. But at the time, I felt betrayed. I felt like if they had just stood up for me, that wouldn't have happened. I felt like if they would have just come and said, hey, what are you doing? That, the boys would have just stepped back and been like, oh, we're leaving, I don't know if they would have though. So I, yeah, I felt completely and utterly betrayed. I set out to ruin their lives, actually. After that, I did.
I mean, that silence from your friends must have been like cut deeper than the actual situation. I mean, it really shows how moments like this like force you to reevaluate who has your back and who is just standing on the sidelines.
Yes, because because they were people that I hung out with on a regular basis. Like we were every day hanging out. And so it wasn't just like they were just some casual, say hi and then pass on by. These were like my friends.
Yeah.
So for them to just pretend they didn't see was very, very hard to watch them watching me and not do anything.
Yeah. So, a huge theme in this memoir is that real change does not start with blaming your past or your parents. It starts with seeing your current self clearly. So, how do you help your coaching clients make that pivot when they are still hurting from their own childhood traumas?
So I think the thing is that, one of the things that I try to impress upon folks, especially like when they're still hurting, is I don't expect you to fully stop hurting. So I don't expect you to fully heal to make change. So like, for example, I still have nightmares. I still have nightmares from the things that happened back then. I probably will have nightmares for the rest of my life because of some of the things that I saw and seen, in back then. Does that mean that I'm not actively changing today and actively making positive impact in people's lives today? No. So I don't think that we have to be defined or limited by our trauma. We can understand that it will possibly be a part of us for a long time, but it doesn't have to define who we are. So when I'm working with people, I first help them to understand that the expectation shouldn't be to completely overcome the past, because sometimes you may not fully overcome the past. What your goal should be is to decide what your present is going to look like. What are you going to do today? What kind of choices are you going to make today? What are your goals for today? And focus on your today goals. And then as you build your today goals and you gain confidence with your today goals, then you can start building your tomorrow goals. But you have to start with your today goals. Sometimes the big boys tell you to start with these big, giant goals for future. Those only set you up to get discouraged. But if you start with these smaller goals for today, what am I going to do today? And you move yourself in that direction, you have a success, immediate result at the end of the day. That's going to lift you up for the next day. And that's going to build you up. The next day, you're going to have more results that you set yourself up for success. And the more you build on those success platforms, right, your confidence grows because you now have tangible, verifiable evidence that it works. And then you say, I'm going to plan for the next 2 days. I'm going to plan for the next 3 days. And you see how, and it just grows. And then you can start building for longer goals, because those goals now become more possible. You don't start with these big goals when you can't even see today.
Yeah, that balance is everything, and you have explained really well.
Oh, thank you.
So the book is actually part 1 of the Impossible Shift trilogy. Now that you have faced the mirror and laid bare the mean girl past, what can readers expect to explore in next 2 phases of this evolution?
So book 1, it was about confronting who I was. That's why it's called Mean Girl to Meaningful Life. Book 2 is about discovering who I became when life completely unraveled. And then book 3 is about learning the transformation isn't about a destination, it's a way of living. So all of the books kind of work together to show you the whole philosophy in how the Impossible Shift works.
Wow, I love that where it's going.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It gets super personal in book 2 and 3, even more so than book 1. I don't even know if I'm ready for it to come out because it's so personal, but you know, it's part of the journey.
So, have you already started writing the second book?
The second book is complete. It's in editing right now. It's supposed to be released in December.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
So, memoirs usually focus on the ways the author was hurt by the world, but yours focuses on the ways you hurt others. So, were you at all terrified of how your family, friends, or coaching clients would judge you once this book hit the shelves?
Um, so the only person's opinion that I was like super worried about was my mom's, and before she passed away, I got her opinion, and she was the one who told me to go ahead and publish it. You know, I know you read the book, so you know I didn't paint her out to be very like she wasn't painted out well, but I do, you know, resolve that in book 2 and 3. But you know, she told me that I should put it out because people needed to see it, and she understood. But she's not with us anymore. So if her, who was written in the book and you know was one of my central villains, said publish it, I think I'm okay with other people's opinions.
Nice. Because it really takes unbelievable guts to, put your worst moments out there for everyone to read it. So you wrote that real change is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming honest enough to evolve. After going through the grueling process of writing all this down, do you finally feel like you have forgiven that your younger version of yourself?
I do. You know, I think that my younger self made the decisions that she made with the knowledge that she had at the time, and you know that's all we can do. Um, and that's why I'm so determined to share this information now, because now that I understand it, I want other people to understand it, because I feel like it'd be selfish to just keep it to myself when other people can benefit from it, and then they can go back and say, you know, I'm so glad that my younger self could be happy, you know, knowing that I healed, or that, you know, not that I healed, but that I've grown and, you know, taken accountability for who I am today, you know, and moved forward in a positive way and made good changes to better my future. So I'd like to think so. I did say to someone that if I ever went back in time and she saw me, she probably wouldn't listen to a word I had to say. But, you know, she's in her space, so that's okay.
Nice. So I personally believe that writing a book is not easy, especially memoirs with such heavy moments. So because reliving those moments is really not easy, you have to relive those moments that you're writing, that tough phase of your life. So what was the challenging part of writing this book for you?
I think there were multiple challenging parts. There were several parts where I found myself, you know, like either fully crying or on the verge of tears, especially, you know, the scenes where I, you know, talked about my parents, because they're gone, and because, you know, like that scene that we mentioned earlier, you know, with my father, I know that I was painting him out to not look well, but it happened, right? And I desperately wanted to hide that truth because I didn't want to hurt his memory. But it happened, and it needed to be told, because it showed and illustrated why I became what I became, and that needed to happen so that like you could see the transformation. All of it everything had to happen the way it happened as part of the memoir. It's the truth, right? You have to speak to your truth. So it was painful. It was painful reliving that. It was painful remembering those moments. The room at the end of the hall. Every single time I wrote about the room at the end of the hall, I had to relive that memory of that violation that took place. Right. Those are hard things to. So that's why I didn't even like physically, like I didn't write it out. I just alluded to it because it was just too traumatic.
Yeah, understandable. So I also want to know one thing, like when was it moment for you when you realized that okay, there is a kind of book need to be written on my life story because I've gone through a lot.
Uh, I don't know. um, it started as a journal. I wrote the journal, over the course of like 10 years. It started out, I started writing the journal because, to be honest, because of the nightmares, right? So they were saying, hey, write down, the things that happen, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it will help you process through some of the trauma to help you figure out like what's causing all the nightmares. So that's kind of where it began. And then from there, it became what it is today. So it started out as a journal to help me deal with trauma. So, which is crazy that it was a journal for trauma and turned out into an accountability and transformation memoir.
Nice. So after going through a lot and writing a book about it, is there any message or advice that you would like to share with the audience out there?
So I guess my message is, what I'm hoping that when readers finish with, all 3 books, so they each, it's going to come out in a year. So it takes 3 years for everything to be done. But by the time everything is all said and done, bless you, is that by the final page, readers will stop seeing themselves in me and start seeing what's possible for themselves. I don't think they need me, right? I think that they can do this on their own. Their journey can start as early as the end of this conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
And they can start saying, I think, I think she's right. I'm going to go ahead and start making some choices right now, and then start making some decisions. And then, my services are only for those that are like, no, I want to be handheld through this process, right? It's not for every single person. I don't have like this, you absolutely must come see me if you want to be successful. No. Just make some choices, right?
Yeah, that is beautiful advice that you gave. And lastly, I just want to express my heartfelt thank you for joining me today and sharing your journey so honestly. It was really wonderful conversation with you. And to everyone listening out there, do check out the book, The Impossible Shift. It's available on Amazon. I will mention all the links in the description. And you can also connect with the author on Instagram to stay connected with her creative journey. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Have a nice day.